This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and we're glad to be with you today. Got a great episode, great guest on the show to talk about some really cool stuff around leadership today. Today, we're going to be talking about the art of being lazy and how that can help you as a leader be as successful as possible. Yes, you heard that right. The lazier you are, the more successful you can be. That goes against what your mom and dad always told you. It goes against probably all the books you read. But today we're going to talk about how to do that and help you, your teams be successful in that process. We have a wonderful guest on the show today. His name is Jim Schleckser. He literally wrote the book on how to be lazy as a leader. And we're going to dig into that and understand a little bit more of that perspective today. But let me tell you a few things about Jim. Jim's the CEO of the CEO Project, which serves as a leadership advisory group for CEOs all over the world. He has run numerous companies throughout his career. He is an author of 2 books. One of them is called Professional Drinking, which is another thing we're going to talk about today too. That's really cool. And the other book is Great CEOs Are Lazy. He's also serves on numerous boards and committees and associations, serving and giving back to the community. And he also hosts his own podcast. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Jim Schleckser. Jim, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet, man. Excited to have you on the show and learn some different things about leadership. Today, we're going to be kind of expanding people's maybe traditional views about leadership and how to be successful, because when I was growing up, everybody, work hard and get out there and lead by example and do all these things. And that all those are good and well, but that doesn't always take you to the top of the pyramid, to the top of the mountain in your career. And it certainly doesn't necessarily take the organization to where it needs to be from the long term best interests of the organization. So, Jim, give us some background on you and how you got to where you are today. Let the audience get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. So I undergraduate degree in engineering, and I did a very brief stint actually as an engineer, which is probably a good thing because I don't think I'm a very good engineer. But I went on and got a degree in business, and that was really my sweet spot. So subsequent to that, I ended up did some sales and marketing and stuff, but ultimately, very young age, started running technical companies. Initially, a kind of a capital equipment company, and then an instrumentation and controls company, and then later a telecommunication hardware, software services businesses, but all technical businesses. So the engineering helped, even though
Right.
luckily the world, I wasn't much of an engineer. And then almost 20 years at this point, I jumped off the corporate track and started this business that I run now, which I do CEO advisory work with peer groups. So we work with CEOs of growth companies around the country, all different industries, curating high quality advisory groups for them.
So tell us a little bit about the CEO project. What all do you do in that? How does this work? Some people may or may not be familiar with peer advisory groups and what that is and isn't. I run into people all the time and I ask them like, so who runs in your pack? What tribe are you part of and how does that work? And sometimes I get kind of this blank stare of, yeah, I don't really have a peer group. Like, what is that? How does that work? And so explain that to us.
Well, this goes back to Think and Grow Rich, a book that a
Yeah.
lot of people have read. It's an older book by Napoleon Hill. And one of the things he talks about in the book is building a mastermind group around yourself. So this is a group of people that are smart and respected, and they have your interest at heart without any agenda. Now, he was talking about sort of forming it on your own. But what we do is we will build for you that mastermind group, that group that has your interests at heart, but no agenda, super smart. In our case, all other CEOs of like size companies. And we bring them together on a regular basis to process your most critical issues, the ones that are going to make, millions of dollars of difference in your business. You can come and work with this group. They will help you solve your problems. And because they're from all different industries, we put sort of a heterogeneous group together. While their size and complexity is the same, the industries are different. They look at the problem differently than the way you do. And that's where breakthrough thinking
Hmm.
comes from. We tell people breakthrough thinking doesn't come from inside your industry, it comes from outside your industry. So when you're with a group of really smart people that, finance, marketing, engineering, whatever, they look at your problem and go, geez, Jason, why do you do it like that? Why don't you do it this other way? And you go, geez, I don't know. I never thought of it. I guess that is a really good idea though. So that's the nature of CEO peer groups. It's, there's another saying, they go, you are the average of the 10 people you hang around the most. Well, this is about having a group of really capable people that, man, if you all performed as each other are, because we select for, growth performers, but humble learners. So we look for some of those characteristics. They're just good quality, high performing people. And it's a phenomenal sort of mastermind group that we build for you. And we do it for you. It's sort of a done for you mastermind group, if you will.
So help us understand, how does that work? If I was a part of this group with you, what does that look like and feel like? Do you meet on a weekly basis, daily basis, monthly basis? What kind of stuff do you talk about? Is there structure to it, or is it like almost like a church group meeting talking about church stuff, but it's in a business manner? Like how does that work?
Yeah, we have a couple of factors that make a difference here. I talked about the membership
Yeah.
and the quality of the members, but the second item is the methodology. And I do talk a fair amount about this concept in Great CEOs Are Lazy, the book that you mentioned.
Yep.
And I'm going to just spend a bit of time on that theory. Um, there's a guy named Eli Gold, and I literally interviewed thousands of CEOs to find this out. The really good ones work kind of normal amounts of hours, and what they do is they apply what's called the theory of constraints. They don't actually say this because they don't maybe even know the theory of constraints, but this guy named Eli Goldratt, who was an Israeli physicist, came up with this theory. He says any system you can name, there's a point of constraint that controls the entire system. So the simple example is a garden hose. So we've all been out watering our backyard or whatever, and we get a kink in the hose. Now, a hose's job is to put water out the end of the hose, right?
Yep.
But if there's a kink in the hose doesn't perform as it should. And your job is to find the kink and open it up. And that way the hose performs at its best capacity. Well, the same thing's true in your business. Somewhere in your business, there's a kink in the hose, a point of constraint. The CEO's job is to find the point of constraint and open it up. And that is the highest and best use of their time. So, back to what do you do in the group meeting? We meet quarterly, scheduled a year in advance. We find for busy people, because we focus on larger companies, kind of over $25 million of revenue up to kind of 2.5 billion. We say, let's identify your point of constraint. What's the thing that's in the way? And that's the issue you're going to bring to the group. And so we have it sort of looks like a case study from MBA school almost, where it's all written up. Here's what's going on. Here's the background. Here's some options I have. You bring that to the group. You read through it. They ask questions, and then they give you feedback. Like like I said, hey, why do you do it like that? Or, geez, I think you're solving the wrong problem. Like, why are you worried about this when the big problem is this other thing? And you go, oh man, you're right. It's really, you know, impactful direct feedback that you get from this group, which is rare. It's almost like we've had people say, somebody who had a lot of boards of directors in their life, they go, it's the board I wish I had. It's a good way to
Ah,
describe it.
I
Really
like
talk
that.
about
That's
hard
good.
issues. But what's cool is everybody goes every time. Everybody brings their point of constraint. And in terms of becoming a better CEO, you obviously learn from your issue, but then you learn from everybody else's issue too. You might see me talk about, I don't know, Salesforce compensation. They go, man, I really like how Jim is handling Salesforce compensation. I'm just going to steal that idea, right?
Mm.
And I don't care. We're non-competitive. I'll send you the whole plan. You just change the name if you want to. So it's a way to just elevate yourself as a leader, and have models of other really high performing CEOs. You can pick up points for them, how they do it, how they run their business, and adopt it to your own style. And this is how we become better CEOs. And I'm going to say it, if we're not progressing and growing as CEOs, then our people and our business is going to stop growing. So it's super critical you do something. I'm obviously a fan of peer groups, but there are other ways to do it as well. But I think as
Yeah.
leaders, we have an obligation to keep growing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Everybody needs to grow. When you stop growing, you kind of I kind of liken it to an airplane. Now, I got an aviation background, and so, what do you need to make an airplane move forward, right? And stay at whatever altitude. You need thrust and you need vector, right? You need the thrust to
Hmm.
move you forward, you need the vector to guide you left, right, up and down in order to get from point A to point B. But if you ever lose thrust, you ever stop growing, you ever stop losing that thrust behind you, the plane eventually goes down, right? That's just how physics works, and it works that way in humans too. If you stop learning and growing and being curious and thinking outside the box and putting forth that kind of mindset and effort, you're going to start kind of dying on the vine a little bit, right? And that has a trickle effect, especially at the top of the leadership food chain, because
Hmm.
everybody else is watching you. And if you're just chilling and hanging out, not growing and changing, and you're got your feet up on your desk and waiting to cash the next check, that's the start of the end for any organization, right?
Yeah, no
So
doubt.
that's really, really cool, man. The peer groups have been around for a while. This
Yeah.
isn't something that you or anybody else created yesterday. These things have been around a long time, and they are powerful because leaders are lonely at the top. Leaders can't just go talk to all the employees about all the leadership issues at the top of the mountain there in the corporate office, right? Like, leaders need to hang out with other leaders. They need to be
Yeah.
inspired by other leaders. And like you said, think outside the box and problem solve and look at things from different perspectives. Because, a lot of the complaints you get from leaders is that, it's hard to find people that get them on their level,
Yep.
right? They go home at night and they talk to their spouse, and their spouse may get it to a certain extent, but then the spouse like, yeah, that's great. Here's what I think, but we still need to clean up the kitchen and we got to get the kids to bed. And there's a point
Yeah.
where they stop listening. They just don't understand.
Yeah.
And by surrounding yourself by people that get it, allows you to think differently. And I think that's your point, right? Is
Yeah.
leaders have to be challenged by other people that get it to continuously think differently.
Yep. No, that's 100% right. When I talk to people, I go, look, you can't. Some of these issues, you can't go to your spouse. I mean, unless you're lucky and they're some super duper business person, but that's rare.
Rare.
You can't go to your board if you have a board, because that's not a no consequence environment. You can't walk into the board meeting and say, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I don't actually know what to do in this situation. Like, that's a
Right.
career limiting move, right?
Yeah. That's a
And a
confidence
lot of times
reducer. Yeah.
you can't go to your team either. You can't go, hey, I'm thinking about reorganizing the whole company and da da da. And they go, you can't tell your team that, not until you got it kind of baked, right?
Yeah.
So where do you go? And then that's where a mastermind group or CEO advisory, CEO peer group is incredibly valuable.
Yep. And that's where the value of like a business coach, an advisory group, and kind of these other, I know some churches out there, decent sized churches, they offer groups where company leaders can get together and they can exercise together and worship in the scriptures, and they kind of blend the spiritual side in there with it too.
Yep.
That's kind of rounds out some of these conversations. And so if you are not in a peer group, or you haven't surrounded yourself with a group of people, even if it's not an official peer group, ask yourself, do I have 10 people around me that can elevate me, encourage me, challenge me, hold me accountable, and help me elevate as I can help them elevate? If you don't, you need to think about some of your options, wherever you may be, that can help you do that, so you can continue to be the best leader you can be. And so, Jim, that kind of takes me to, another thing I wanted to talk to you about. And that is this whole notion of like what makes a good leader, what makes a great CEO. Ironically, you call your group there the CEO project. It's a project of working on CEOs and building them up. But what makes a good CEO? What are some of the things you're seeing out there and some of the challenges and struggles that some of these leaders are having, that you're trying to address in the first place?
And the concept of CEO project is conscious. It mean, you think about it, it's never really done. When I say it's a
Exactly.
project, it's always in process, right? And I think that's one of the secrets to a really good CEO. They go, I am never the finished product. I've always got work to do. I can always get better.
Yep.
I can always be a better leader. I can learn more. I can be more focused. I can be a better leader. So the sort of a learner is really important. I think once in a while I'll talk to the CEO who's not old, 50 something like that, and they go, Jim, I can't learn that. I'm too old. I'm like, at 50? Like, for goodness sake, with modern medical science, you might only be halfway done, my friend. Like, what are you
No
crazy?
kidding.
Yeah, but literally, like they're done learning at 50. I'm more in the teaching phase of my life than the
Yep.
learning phase. I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, you can't do that to yourself. So good CEOs, always curious, always learning, always trying to figure out what's next. So I think that's one that we see. But that idea that I'm always a project is humility. It
Mm.
says I'm not the finished product. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I've got lots of things to learn. And I think humility makes you approachable. I think it makes you aware that you might make a mistake, because arrogance, which is the other side of it, makes you unapproachable, makes you think you don't make mistakes, which we all make plenty of mistakes. There's no doubt
Yep.
about it. Yeah. And so people don't like to work for, arrogant people. They go, that's no fun. Why? They talk about invulnerability. Lencioni talks about it. And people don't like to work for people like that. And the problem is, we also need to be confident as CEOs. So we need to say, hey, we're heading for that hill. Everybody, let's line up. We're going there. And you need to have a level of confidence about where you're bringing the organization and some of the decisions you make. But there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, right? So
Yep.
you just have to be careful that, like, I got plenty of confidence, but it doesn't slip into arrogance. And that's a trick, that we all struggle with as leaders and as CEOs, is to not become arrogant and not to believe our own press clippings. I think it's particularly hard when your company's doing really well. You start to believe all those cool things people are saying about you, about how smart you are and how da 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 da, and you're like, what, you need to just little self talk, like, I'm all true maybe, but I'm going to make a mistake tomorrow or maybe even this afternoon, right?
Yep.
And be okay with that. So I like to lead with, look, I make lots of mistakes, and I'm counting on you guys to help me find them before I really screw something up badly. That's like a kind of a good place to come from as a CEO, and as a leader, I think. So learner, humble, confident, but not too confident. Those would be a couple of the characteristics, at least I personally think, are important.
Yeah, completely agree. Those are really great. So, Jim, the book. Lazy
Yeah.
CEOs. What inspired you to write a book about CEOs being lazy? I mean, that's something you don't see on the Barnes and Noble shelves every day. There's usually, books are written in the bookstores that have different kind of slants on them, but you took a completely different approach and like, hey, be lazy, be a great CEO. So talk to us about the book. What inspired you to write that book, and what message are we really sending here with that?
Yeah. And it really came from my interviewing literally thousands of CEOs. And I could ask a couple of questions and figure out if a CEO was a good one or maybe a lower performer. And
Yeah.
question number one was, how many hours a week are you working? And if they said 80, almost every single time they were a poor CEO.
Yep.
They were not getting the results they wanted. Their kids didn't like them, and their dog bit them when they came home, and like they're just completely out of balance and not
Yeah.
and not overperforming, right? And then you run into one, you're like I don't know, 50, 55, depends on what's going on. And they had a balanced life, they could work out, yet they were getting really interesting results. I'm like, what the heck is the difference between these two groups? That's what led me to this theory of constraint, that if you are, as a CEO, focused on the point of constraint in your business and you spend 30% of your time or more on it, and you go, that's the highest and best and economic use of my time. So everything else I do is of lower value, and I'm going to squeeze it into my available hours. And that means there's a lot of low value stuff we all do that should go overboard. And I can talk about how we manage that in a minute. But basically, you do a lot of stuff as a CEO that's very low value. And what you need to do is figure out where that point of constraint is. And just like the hose I talked about, find the point of constraint, because sometimes it's a little sneaky, it can hide on you, and fix it. And if you just consistently find the point of constraint and then fix it, and then reanalyze and do it again, and reanalyze and do it again, you'll get a very high performing, growing company, and you don't have to spend 80 hours a week doing it. So that's sort of where the genesis of Lazy CEO came from. There's a famous Bill Gates quote. He says, "If I have a hard job to do, I find a lazy person to do it because they will find the most efficient way to get that job done."
I've
And
seen
that's
that
sort of the
before.
spirit of the book, right? Is it doesn't mean we don't do hard things. It means we're very efficient in the use of our time to get those hard things done.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. So let's talk about your definition of a lazy CEO. What is not a lazy CEO, and what is a lazy CEO?
Yep. I got myself an MBA a bunch of years back ago. And one of the things that we learned in MBA school is this concept of stakeholders. So every business has stakeholders, which are people that have an interest in the performance of your business. That would be your employees and your suppliers and your customers and your shareholders and maybe the community and so forth. And what people decided to do is they say, well, I've got this. If I'm the CEO, I'm going to give them all kind of 10% of my time. 10%, 10%, 10%. In other words, I'm going to peanut butter nice and evenly spread my time across the business to satisfy my stakeholders. So we do that. The problem is that basically ensures that you will never get anything interesting done in the business. Because the only way to get something interesting done is to maldistribute or stack all your time, all your chips up on kind of one bet or two bets, maybe, and make sure you're successful with them. There's a thing in the market that goes, you don't put your what's the saying? You put all your eggs in one basket, but then you watch the basket. That's the
Hmm.
concept. You're going to pick one thing to do, but then you are going to make sure it performs. If you do that, you get a great outcome. So that's really where this came from in the basic concept. I could and back to finding and fixing, we have some hats that we recommend the CEOs wear while they're finding the point of constraint and they're fixing the point of constraint. But there's a lot of meetings that we do that and time that we spend that just doesn't contribute to finding the point of constraint or opening it up because we've got this stakeholder mentality we learned from the MBAs and other people. And it's just not productive. We shouldn't be spending as much time unless it's at the point of constraint. Now, any of those things I talked about, could be your point of constraint. And if it is, sure, load up your time. But if it's not, you don't need to spend so much time there as a leader. And that feels weird. You're like, geez, I'm ignoring people that I should maybe be spending time with. And you go, if you want the
Yep.
best outcome, yes, you should do that. Don't, it's not never, it's just don't spend so much time with them now. Maybe later you'll be spending more time with them.
All right. So what can, if people listen to the show, what are some things that they can maybe think about or do differently that'll make them more lazy? Lazy means, you're not doing as many things. So that means you're delegating, or you're, handing off responsibilities to other people, or, doing things differently than you may originally have thought you needed to do it. Right. I think about the book E-Myth, by
Yep, love
Michael
it.
Gerber, right? You've got the entrepreneur level, the manager level, and then you got the technician level, right? And quite often, even when I work with people as a coach, I will often find that about 70 to 80% of their time is in that mid level manager level and at the technician level, putting out fires, dealing with daily gripes and complaints, and what I'm going to call a lot of noise of the company. And they're not spending, but maybe 10% of their time at that entrepreneurial level, focused on the future and strategy and the next hill to climb and the next thing to innovate, and what the competition's doing and how to capture more market share. And they miss opportunities. Operate for every minute you spend in in mid-level management issues and technical things. There's opportunities driving right by the front door you're not even seeing and capturing, and that's costing you time and money. And so it kind of reminds me of that philosophy. Is that you know similar than of things you're talking about here?
Absolutely, and I love Gerber's book. I mean, we recommend it all the time. Um, the and particularly in smaller companies, we see leaders what we call stuck in a role, right?
Yeah.
I'm the best salesperson or the best sales manager, so I spend a lot of time in the sales area, for example, or engineer. I'm a great engineer, so I'm out there designing new products and whatnot. And the question we ask them is, "Go, so I got a question. So, Jason, when you're being the great engineering manager, who's being the CEO?" And they go, nobody. They go, exactly. So it is easy to get stuck in a role, as you indicate, because it's ego gratifying. You know it, you're good at it. You can just bang, 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 nail down those problems. You go home, feel like you had a lot of success, a lot of, but it really didn't move the ball forward very much. I had a manager at one point. He goes, "I'm not a very good swimmer. I jump in the pool and I splash around and there's noise and water going everywhere, but I don't make a lot of forward progress." And he says, sometimes people confuse that activity level with progress. And progress activity level are very different. If you watch the swimmers in the Olympics recently, some of them were just smooth. I mean, there was not a lot of splashing in some of those races because
No.
they're so efficient in the use of their time. And that's what we're after, is an efficient use of the time. So one tool I can give you is the not do list. And so we tell people to take your to do list, which many of us do. I have my own. Rank order it in the economic impact to your business. Biggest economic impact at the top, smallest at the bottom. And one of the discriminators here, when we think about high value work, it's work where I invest time today and it pays back over time. Invest it today to pay back over time, because invest it today and it just sort of creates something and then it's gone. That's not particularly valuable. So this will be things like improving your business model, hiring and coaching great talent, improving your processes and methodologies in your business would all sit in this invest time that pays back over time. So when you're thinking about what should be at the top of the list, those kind of things should be at the top of the list. You draw a line about halfway up the list. Everything below the line, you do 3 Ds: delegate, defer, don't do. So don't do, you're literally going to cross it off the list. You will never do it. And what's wild, Jason, and I'm sure you've had this experience, we get that same little endorphin hit in our brain, whether we actually did it or not, because just crossing it off, we feel good about ourselves. So cross it off. Never deal with it. If it shows its ugly head again, we'll deal with it then. But I can tell you that I do this sometimes. 9 out of 10 times, I never see it again. It really wasn't an issue. It was an imaginary issue. The second one is defer it. And that is, I'll leave it on the list, but I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just going to let it sit there and let's see if time solves it.
Yep.
You would be shocked at how many things seem like a big problem today and they just sort of evaporate. They're not a big problem, it turns out, or it's not as urgent as I thought it was. And
Yeah.
so time can solve problems. And then the last one the one you mentioned is delegate. So delegation, we talk about that as our job as leaders is to build organizational capacity to execute, like build the team up, get the muscles of the business bigger. When you delegate something that is below the line for you as a leader, not important enough for your time, and I give it to someone else, it's a developmental opportunity for them.
Yep.
They go, hey, CEO just gave me a project. She thinks I can handle this and I'm going to learn some things. And that's all true. We don't tell them, by the way, it didn't make my list, but we're going to ask them to do it. And they will grow as an individual as a result of that. So, wow, I lost something I wasn't really ever going to get to. Somebody else developed as a leader or as a contributor or whatever. That's like a double win with good delegation. Now, the trick here is, and I'm sure you talk to people about this, is we don't delegate all the way to the top of the delegation scale day one. We don't go, here, handle it. It's all yours. Don't even let me know what you do. We start with, hey, check into it, come back and talk to me. I'll decide, and then you'll go do. Up to come up with a plan, tell me what you want to do. And if I don't say no, just go do it. Up to go do it, do or figure it out, do what you want to do. Just let me know what you did. Right. And the factors to think about on how quickly I delegate are how competent is the individual? Is this person a green bean that's never done it before? Or are they like a seasoned, been around the block a few
Yep.
times person who gets it, right? Risk, are they going to sink the company if they screw up? If it's like, what sandwiches are we going to serve at the company picnic? I'm like, I don't even need to know like, just do it, right? Like, there's no problem if you're wrong. So just do it. But if we're like, let's rebrand the whole company, new website, new colors, new everything, I go, whoa, 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 whoa. We're going to delegate that one very, very slowly,
Yep.
right? And then the other one is reversibility. Jeff Bezos talks about one-way doors and two-way doors. If it's now, to be fair, all decisions are reversible with enough money and time. But let's just say really, really hard to reverse or relatively easy to reverse. Easy to reverse, delegate them fast and hard. Because if we screwed up, we just go walk back through the same door, no big deal. One-way doors or irreversible decisions, be really slow about going up that delegation curve because once we do it, it's over. Like we're going to sell a product line. Like you can't really come back from that one if you screwed it up.
Yeah.
So that's the secret. The not do list, 3Ds, and then the levels of delegation would be a really good tool to sort of compress what you're working on as a leader.
Yeah, I think that's a good compliment to Ken Blanchard's situational leadership model. Like there's a quadrant there,
Yeah.
and where are your people in your organization? And of course, it depends on the topic, depends on the gravity, the importance, the priority. I mean, there's all these factors involved, but as you are communicating and delegating, some people are what I call fire and forget people. They're true
Mm.
delegator people, right? You can get, throw something over the fence at them and give them very little guidance, and they will take that and they know exactly the expectation. They know exactly what they need to do. And they just, email you back and say, it's all taken care of, good to go. And that was handled in the most appropriate fashion
Hmm.
per your expectations because they've worked around you, they have the experience, and you're just in sync on those kind of levels, and they've proven that time and time again. Some people, they need to maybe just need to encourage them and coach them a little bit through the process. Not a lot of engagement, but then on the other end of the spectrum, these are people that maybe are new, maybe are less competent, maybe just not as knowledgeable or whatever about a situation, or just hasn't really gotten in sync with you yet on how you operate to operate at that efficient manner of doing things faster. And, quite frankly, they just need to have a lot of interaction. So I love that. I think that is crucial. And what surprises me, Jim, is how many leaders screw that up. They just
I
want to
know.
delegate and get the hot potato off their plate as fast as possible. And they give all this stuff to people that are not competent, um, or seasoned or experienced or whatever, and you
Yeah.
haven't built a relationship there, and they're just slinging hot potatoes down the totem pole, and people struggle with it, and there's confusion and chaos, and then half the time they don't follow up, and it's like it doesn't work that way.
No, and we hear people, we'll hear leaders say, geez, my people, I try to delegate to them and they just don't get it. And I just don't have anybody I can hand stuff to. And probably, to your point, Jason, it's because of the way you delegated it.
Yep.
Like you didn't assess the person and their readiness, and are they consciously incompetent, or consciously competent, or are they, you know, uh, uh, unconsciously competent? I mean, where are they on that continuum that Blanchard indicated, right?
Yep.
And using that to decide how hard and fast can I delegate this, right? Your most trusted number two, start throwing stuff at them, they'll figure it out. But somebody who's been with you a month and a half, you go, I better, you can't just delegate. You got to spend a little time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't come for free with them.
Yeah, the old trust but verify method. And
There you go.
I like the agile business model, right? Where, people in these situations where, okay, hey, we've got a new campaign we're running for marketing. So marketing team, go to the drawing board. Here's what we're looking to do. Here's why we're looking to do it. Here's what successful outcomes look like. Create the plan and come back to me next week and let's see where we are, right? It's iterative. There's weekly conversation. They have enough space to be creative and innovative and come up with different concepts and present them to you and get your feedback on them. But it's a step by step thing where I think a lot of leaders make mistakes is they'll hand stuff off. People will go behind the magic curtain for months and months on end, come back, present this, end all be all presentation of how they're going to solve world hunger, and it's not even in the ballpark. And they've wasted all that time and energy and have to go back to the drawing board. Do you see that a lot, Jim?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, this, but an iterative approach like you talk about is really the right, little course corrections as we go. It's like if I put you in your plane and said, "Hey, fly to Reno," and you go, "You're going to just fly. You don't get to look at the map or anything, and we'll pull off the blindfold in a couple hours, and just we'll see where you are." Right? As opposed to, well, check your vector. Where am I good? Okay, wind is a little bit more than I thought. Okay, little to the right, little left. I mean, that's just like flying a plane. You have to make constant course corrections to end up
Yep,
where you'd like to be. It's funny though, when we do those small course corrections, one of the things you have to be careful as leaders, I think, is ownership versus perfection. And we
that's a
talk
great
about
point.
80, right? So we talk about like an 80% level. So if somebody shows up and they're like 80, 85% on point, maybe 90, we are so tempted as leaders to go, well, yeah, but change this, change that, change this, and then it'll be really good, meaning the way I think it should be, right? And which we might or might not be right. And you know what you did? You just caused them to lose ownership over the project. And I'm like, you'd
Yep,
rather have somebody who owns it 100%, that's at like an 80, 85, 90% goodness level, than somebody who's at 100% goodness, but they're like 50% own it now. Like I don't own it. I own it with the boss now. So we've got to be careful to go more often than we probably do today. Go, you know what? That looks amazing. Carry on. I mean, if they're really off the course, then we got to do what we got to do. But
yeah,
coaching up that last 10% can really be a killer for ownership by your team. And you want them to own the project and feel like it's theirs.
right. Well, there's a flip side to that too that's really, really important. I learned this lesson in the military. One of my first bosses, when I first went in the military, I sat in his office, he welcomed me in, and here's what we do, here's why we do it, and here's where you're gonna be, and here's what I expect from you, and all the normal first meeting with the boss kind of conversation. And at the very end of the meeting, he says, and I expect you to deliver 75% solutions to me and move on.
Ooh, I like
And
that.
I sat there and I thought, what? Like I was, it kind of threw me for a loop for a minute. And I'm a kind of an expression type of person. I guess he looked at my face and he's like, let me explain.
Yeah.
One, we are way too busy for you to waste time getting everything to 100%. By the
Hmm.
time that the juice is not worth the squeeze normally, if it
Yep.
needs to be 100%, then I'll tell you it needs to be 100%. If I don't tell you it needs to be 100% kill shot, then I'm expecting 75% because we have too many things going on. I'm going to keep sending you stuff and it's going to back up on you and it's going to
Hmm.
pile up and you're going to start working late and when I leave at between 5:30 and 6 and I still see you in the office every night till 7 and 8, I'm going to think that you're not prioritizing your time very well and managing your people
Mm.
and your efforts and you're not delegating and communicating, and that tells me if you're working those many hours that you're struggling to be a leader, which is going to force me to rate you as such.
Yeah. I love that. And extending it as a company, if you say we don't move until we have 99% of the available information, we can de-risk the decision by like really knowing everything in the
Yeah.
world about it, you lose all competitive advantage.
Yes.
In other words, somebody else moved at 75% and they're already out there getting it done while you're spinning, 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 trying to get that last 20% of the information out. And you're behind the market and you just lost all your initiative. And so I think I love the 75% idea of like, because it gets you there faster. And oh, by the way, there's nothing like experience to teach you. You'll get out there and go, oh, geez, that was a little bit wrong. Let's fix that, fix
Yeah.
this, fix that. That's how you learn. So I love that 75% idea.
The other side of the coin is that crap in the world just moves fast and it's
Yeah,
moving faster and faster and faster. And so you spend all this time trying to perfect things. And by the time you move on to two, three, four other projects down the road, all that time and effort you spend getting everything to 100% is overcome by events.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Technology
great.
changes and shifts and evolves. I learned again. I learned that powerful lesson. I worked my butt off to run my department in the Air Force a certain way when we were running strong and we were doing great things and winning awards and everything was I got it. It took years to build it and run it and execute, and then a couple years later, I leave. Somebody else comes in and there's a new vision, there's a new mission to go after. We going right this way, now we're going left the other way, and a lot of the stuff you were doing gets changed just in the
Sure.
course of transition, of
Yep.
just the times changing, technology evolving, right? And so a lot of that work just is wasted.
Yep. Yeah. I think about it like optimizing along different axes, right? So, you know, one period, let's say, we might be optimizing the business for growth. So we're going to grow, 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 do what we need to grow. And then, and this is a normal cycle, by the way, you kind of get to a point you go, okay, we're a little flabby. Like we haven't really thought about costs very much here because
Yeah.
we're all about grow, 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 grow. So then you go, okay, now we're going to focus a bit harder on cost, maybe to sacrifice a little bit of growth. Whole different way of optimizing the business, different rules, different decisions being made. But over time, by shifting what we're optimizing on over time, you end up truly optimizing the business on multiple axes. So I think, and then that growth cost uh, difference we see all the time. Like we grow, grow, grow. We got to a point, holy moly, we're not making any money. We got to focus on cost for a while and not be so flabby. Then we get lean and mean. We go, okay, let's get back to growth. And while we grow, we get flabby again. Then we got to get back to cost. So growth and cost focus, I see along those lines. Like, and that's just the dynamics of the business. That's not the market changing, which is a whole nother conversation. So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
So as we are starting to wrap up a little bit here today, Jim, we think about CEOs being lazy. If I'm a CEO and I'm working 60-hour weeks or more, and I'm exhausted and I'm tired a lot and I'm stressed and I'm pulled in a bunch of different directions and I'm feeling the effects of leadership and pressure and competition and all the things that, leaders like that go through. Um, what is your top three pointers for gal, do these things and take the load off? Here's ways you can become lazier. Not lazy as in like you're not going to show back up to work for a week or two, but to take things off your plate. One thing I've learned from you is lazy doesn't mean not work hard.
No.
Lazy means find ways to balance out all of the challenges, all of the work and the projects to the right people that are best suited to do these things. It's lightening the load on people that are carrying too much of a load, which normally are some of the leaders because they're scared of things falling in the cracks or somebody not following up or somebody's going to look bad if this doesn't go a certain way, right? So how can you boil this down to just a couple of really good takeaway points for them to do these things, be lazy, and push the throttle and move forward and be happier?
Yep, got it. So I go back to my not do list. Make that list look to now. Here's what's going to happen. You go, I can't delegate that stuff. So one is look to delegate half of your stuff. You go, I can't do it. Next move, upgrade your talent. Because there's a reason you can't delegate, because your talent isn't at the right level. And that's either coach them up if you can, if they have the competency and the willingness to do so, or add. So dilution solution, add some really capable people, but that's always risky bringing people in from the outside. Um, but sometimes you've got to do that to upgrade your talent over time. And many times the people that got you to this size won't get you to the next size. So you really do need to change the people at some point. And then the third is once you've delegated that work and you've got the right caliber of people around you that can really drive the business to the next level, then you go back to focus on the point of constraint. And I'm going to say the more time you spend on improving your business model, the quality of your business model, in other words, an easy to run, easy to make money at business model, the better off you're going to be. You cannot spend enough time on improving your business model. So try to get rid of stuff you won't be able to. That means you've got a talent problem. Fix your talent problem and then start working on upgrading your business model. If you do those things, you're going to find you can work rational numbers of hours and get really interesting results.
I love it. Jim, how do people get in touch with you, right? You do some phenomenal work. You got some great books out there. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to incorporate some of the topics of your other book, which I think is pretty cool. Um, but if they want to learn more, connect with you, have some more conversations, maybe figure out how to get in a peer group or connect with you in those kind of ways, what's the best way for people to contact you?
So you can go to our website, theceoproject.com. That's a great way. It talks about everything we do, and there's a response form there. Or you can just send me an email directly, jim@theceoproject.com, and we will get right back to you and organize some time or whatever your interest might be. So those would be the two best ways. But you'll see us on all the social media, LinkedIn and TikTok, and goodness knows what else. So
Gotcha. All right. Well, we're going to make sure we get all that stuff in the show notes and capture all those data points for people that if they forgot or they're riding down the road listening to this in their car or jogging around the neighborhood or whatever and can't write it down. It's going to be in the show notes. Click on it, and highly encourage you to connect with Jim. Really smart guy. Been a leader for a long time, and he's just done a phenomenal job of bringing a lot of great leaders together and helping each other. As they say, iron sharpens iron. These kind of groups really really sharpen the blade at a whole nother razor sharp level, right? There's different levels of sharpness to any swords or knives out there. And what he's doing really, really gets that razor sharp because of how that's structured and the things you work on, how you work on those things together as a powerhouse group. So if nothing else, I hope you learned that being a CEO, being a leader is hard. It's one of the hardest jobs there is out there. It's it's extremely difficult to keep up with all the things going on in the world. And so, as Jim said today, I encourage you to think about ways you can be lazier. Things if you don't personally have to do something yourself, like approve, a time card or approve, some kind of a capital loan, or I don't know, anything that you as the leader don't personally have to do, and you can delegate it, you need to delegate it. Leaders need to constantly be keeping their plate clean and focused on the bigger picture, the strategic aspects, the business model, and what you do, how you do it, make sure you deliver that in an excellent manner. That's what CEOs need to be focused on. And so, highly encourage you to get Jim's book, the Lazy CEO. It's got some really great tips, tricks, and lessons that we can all learn from at every level. So that's it for today's show. Next week, got another one on the books. It's going to be great. Next week, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome, right? Why is this such a problem? And continuing to be a growing problem, and then how do you deal with that? How do you overcome that? And so we're going to break that down and hopefully help some people, because this is becoming a bigger problem out there. So that's it. Hope you have a great week, everybody.